Good evening and welcome to Biztech's Aha, the coaching show. Now, this show is all about coaching, and to help you discover the hidden depths of your potential, we navigate the pathways of personal growth. Now, join us in unveiling the layers of leadership that lie beneath the surface, empowering you to chart your course towards mastery. Now, to unveil the mastery behind self leadership, we have an expert on a show today coming to us from Perth in Australia. Now, please welcome Dr. Mustapha Ramdianee, Chief Operating Officer at ATI Mirage Training and Business Solutions. Now, welcome to the show, Dr. Mustapha.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for inviting me on your show. Hello, everybody.
Now, Dr. Mustapha, or affectionately known by everyone as Rambo.
Yes.
Now, could you give us an overview of yourself for a start, and also your journey as a coach?
Yeah, well, I guess I spent over the last 30 years, probably half of my career in the training and development area, and that's where I got into coaching. And then the other half was, I guess, CEO, general manager of companies here in Perth, in Singapore, in Mauritius, and in London. So my journey in coaching really came out of the training, because what we found was that people would come to our training workshops, really enjoy the content, the interactions, learn a lot, but then have problem applying those knowledge and skills into their life. So that's when we started offering the workshop, followed by 3 or 4 coaching sessions. So one example I can give you is time management was probably the first one that I really could see the potential of coaching. So people loved all of the time management tools and techniques that I would share in the workshop. And then in order for them to apply it, that's where one-on-one individual contexts, preferences came into play to help them gain the benefits from that.
So, Rambo, then you use that as and that's a fundamental, isn't it? Time management is something that people grapple with at 15 or at 55.
Absolutely.
And so that's really something where coaching can make an impact. But can I zoom out a little bit and get your opinion on what the coaching landscape looks like in Australia, and particularly through your lens, what's happening in Perth in terms of coaching?
Yes, so I guess if I take it from the demand side first, one of the main drivers for us as an organization, because ATI Mirage, at one point we were offering coaching services, and I'll explain why we don't do it anymore. So that was driven because 50% of so we are a business to business. We only run workshops for staff of government departments and big corporates. So the government of Western Australia, probably about 10 years ago, were very big on the 70-20-10 model of developing their staff. And what that is 10 is the actual formal training that they would send their staff on. So that's where they'll come to us. So that's only 10% of the effort and budget they want to put in development. Only 10% goes to formal workshops. The next 20 is all around coaching that they can give to their staff in terms of applying what they've learned into their workplace. And then 70% of effort in staff development was around on the job, getting feedback, getting job rotation to grow and develop. So when we looked at that, only 10% was coming to us. As a business, we thought, well, we can offer coaching. Well, let's get 20% more of their effort. So we started doing a bit of that. And then from the demand side, the big corporates, the banks mostly were driving a lot of coaching services in terms of developing their staff. So that's from the demand side. And then from the supply side, it has really been individual people who move into coaching and provide their services as an individual. I've seen a few sort of coaches band together to form a company. But from a company, the challenge that we have is that coaching is a one-to-one relationship. So as a business, when our staff, our coaching staff, when they left, they would took their clients with them because the relationship was not with us as an organization.
Mhm.
So that's where over time we decided, well, it's not worthwhile for us as an organization to stay in that coaching provider domain because it's so much of a one-on-one, and especially since COVID, the churn rate in WA is big because the mining boom, people are just moving companies and roles frequently. Plus, since COVID, lots of people have had a bit of an aha moment. What's more important? What do I get joy from? And we now have almost an oversupply of coaches.
So the industry market structure has changed dramatically.
Yeah. And what I've seen, in fact, even the government is not looking too much at the 7/20/10. And late last year, I saw a tender request that came out from one of the government department where they were looking at providers to train their staff to become coaches. So they were looking at ICF accredited training for their staff. Okay. They weren't looking at the staff becoming accredited coaches, but the training that we were going to provide to them was going to be ICF accredited training. And then it was up to the staff themselves to put in the extra efforts to become accredited if they wanted to follow down that path. So that's one change that I'm seeing is instead of going outside to find coaches, some government departments are training their own staff to be coaches.
Okay. Interesting. That's a very interesting insight.
Yeah, so that's in a nutshell from my perspective. I haven't done major research of what's going on in the industry in Perth, but this is what I'm seeing.
So, Dr. Mustapha, now let's get down to the crux of the conversation today. And really, we're looking forward to key learnings, and it's around leadership. And again, I'll hand this over to you because really, as you said, leadership starts with us, the individual.
Yes. So my premise about leadership, in fact, when you think about leadership, the story of leadership is actually one of followership, because a leader cannot be a leader if they don't have followers, right? So then the question becomes, if you cannot lead yourself, why would anyone follow you? Which leads me to that statement that leadership starts with you.
Yeah, it's about self-mastery.
Yes, and in order to lead yourself, you need to know yourself. So then it starts with self-discovery. And that's why I've put the Socrates quote there, to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. So then what I've got is a bit of a leadership framework coaching that I use to help a lot of leaders, whether they are emerging leaders, whether they are CEOs who've been in that role for a while. They can all benefit from this approach. And it's a very simple 3-phase. The first one is really self-discovery. Who am I? You need to know that. Then you need to know, who do I want to be? That's your destination. Then the third phase is, how do I get there? And I'm sure most of us watching and maybe later watching the recording would be users of Google Maps or some other navigation. Mm-hmm. And in order for Google Maps to give you clear directions, it needs 2 things from you: your current location and your destination. Then Google can find different options to give you of how to get to where you are to where you want to be. So it is that simple metaphor that I use to, I guess, help people understand the framework or the journey that I can take them on to be who they want to be. And again, no matter where you are in your leadership journey, you can always benefit from first getting a sense of where you are, who you are, and then where you want to go. So that's the framework. And then just to give you a bit of an insight into some of the tools that I use in those three phases. So always starts with who am I? So some of the self-discovery tools that I use is around helping you surface your values. Then I have the iceberg model that I help you dig deeper below the surface to see some of the drivers and triggers that makes you tick. And then I'm an accredited practitioner of the DISC profiling, which is a great tool to help you understand yourself, but also understand people you interact with. Then we go to stage 2, which is who do you want to be? So this is where I get people to develop potentially a personal mission statement, or just why am I here? What's my purpose? And we can use visualization techniques to help them see in practice, how does it feel? What does it look like to be living your purpose? And another tool I use there is to get them to write what I call a sunset article.
What's that, the sunset article?
Yeah, so a sunset article is, for example, let's say if I take you, for example, and I say, Brian, imagine that Time magazine is going to feature an article about you in 5 years' time. So it's going to be talking about the person you are, the impact you have had on people and businesses, what sort of achievements, and what I get you to actually write the article yourself. So you project yourself into the future 5 years from now, and then you look back and look at what have you achieved, what legacy have you left, what impact have you created on people and businesses. So by doing that, you sort of get clarity of what it is that you want to achieve, what sort of legacy do you want to leave.
Okay, interesting.
And then once we've got those 2 points, we can then look at how do I get there. So we start with a bit of a gap analysis in terms of who you are now, who you want to be. So gap analysis could be around skills, traits, habits. For some people, we even looked at actually getting qualifications in terms of the area that they wanted to get to. So then that then forms part of a bit of a roadmap. What do you need to do? What are the building blocks? What are the milestones you need to achieve in order to get you from A to B?
Okay, tell us then a little bit then. You've given us the overall framework and the journey. Walk us through some of the key points then, perhaps.
Yeah, so maybe what I can do to give you and our followers online here a bit of a deeper insight. I might pick a couple of tools from
like
maybe one from
yeah.
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Like your iceberg model, for example.
Yes. So let me show you the iceberg model. So here you can see on the left a picture of an iceberg, and you can see the water level. And what's visible above the iceberg is typically only 15 to 20% of the whole iceberg. So 80 to 85% of an iceberg is below the surface. And this is how we are as humans. What you see is today is my behavior. That's only 15 to 20% of who I am. You don't see my past. You don't know my thoughts, feelings. You don't see my education, my life experiences, events that have shaped who I am today. You don't see my biases, stereotypes, expectations, values, beliefs, etc. So what we do then is, through a series of very targeted questions, I get people to flush out what's below the surface, because sometimes we ourselves are not aware of those things that are below the surface. And then we can then pick and choose those items on our icebergs that we want to share with others. So typically, I run some team building or towards high performance teams activities for groups at in the workplace, and I would use this also as a way for people to discover a bit deeper, but also to decide what they can share. And I remember running one which was really powerful, because in that team there was such a high level of trust already that they were free to share everything they had written. So in fact, in the boardroom, all of these leaders actually took their iceberg and put it on the wall, and then we got people to walk around and read each other's icebergs.
But
It
that is
had,
very unusual, isn't it? Because normally, and correct me if I'm wrong, the iceberg model, as you said, basically you either show or let people see 10 to 20% maybe of what really you're all about. All the
absolutely.
deeper stuff is suppressed, as you correctly pointed out. Some things you don't even know, basically, that mold you are stuff that's embedded deep within.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't want it in general. You wouldn't share that with other people.
But there is deep power in the sharing, because when people get to understand you and they open up, you open up, and that's what that creates that stronger bond. It strengthens the trust. It's okay to share our strengths and weaknesses, because then people could actually help me on my blind spots and support me on things that I'm not so good at. So then it's a really powerful tool to create high performance teams.
And I can see the value of this, because so let's hypothetically put a scenario in where I'm the leader and I have a subordinate that perhaps isn't the friendliest of people, good performer and all that, but there's something that's holding that person back. And if I then later found out that part of the trauma is really coming from a broken home, and that's why they don't engage as well with the rest of the team, it's not that they're not a team player, that trauma is actually impacting their behavior, and then therefore impacting their interpersonal relationships with their teammates and co-workers. That's something that this will help me to unlock from this person, and therefore draw this person out, make this person a better team player.
Yeah, or just understand them. Because look, one of the deepest human need is the need to be understood, right? And you can see the quote that I put on the iceberg here is that we all bring our past to the present. So who I am today is the function of all of my past. And then by someone understanding and not even trying to change me, by understanding me, they will actually empower me. So very powerful tool. I'm not too sure how we're tracking for time, so I might move on and then.
Yeah. If you could do that, because we probably have about 6 or 7 minutes to go.
Oh, okay. So let me quickly talk to you about, I guess, one tool we use, visualization. So that's when you're visualizing yourself with your purpose to get more clarity of how you're living your purpose. So it is about, I would take people through a visualization process, and almost like a guided meditation, if you wish, that helps you get the clearer the picture, the more you get emotionally attached to that future. And the more emotional attachment you have, the greater your motivation to actually work hard towards that. Otherwise, you can get stuck in your comfort zone. You might say, this is what I wish to be, but then you're not taking steps because the motivation is not strong enough. And just to share with you that many top athletes like Usain Bolt, Mbappe, all do visualization. So for example, Mbappe would visualize how he's taking a free kick, how the ball is bending around to hit that top right corner, for example. So you visualize it. So some of the techniques I use is bring in as much details as possible in terms of what it is that you're doing, who is there, where are you, what are you feeling? We try and engage all the senses. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you smelling? All of the senses we try to bring in to really bring that visualization to life. And this is best done with somebody else who's guiding you, because if you try and just sit, close your eyes and visualize, it might not be as powerful as somebody just giving you some prompts and digging deeper into those details that brings that to life. So that's visualization. Let me just quickly talk about the roadmap, which is once you know who you are, you know where you're going, then it's about creating a roadmap. So roadmap is really an action plan. And so you'll have actions, timelines, milestones. And just to share with you throughout, I've probably been coaching leaders for over 12 years. These elements that I've put on the slide here are the key common themes that I've seen. Most leaders want to know how to better manage their time so that they can be more effective, getting things done quicker, and then have more time to do the bigger picture thinking and the bringing people together with the visioning. Emotional intelligence is always a growing area. I've broken down communication skills. Most people would think, well, communication skills include listening, but I find listening doesn't get enough of a hearing within that. I've made it out. The biggest challenge with a lot of leaders is poor listening skills. And if you're not listening, you're not hearing reality. You can get stuck in your tower and not seeing what's actually going down on the floor. So listening skills, communication skills, and then what I call self-efficacy habits. Because one of the main things that leaders struggle with is they've gone on to some habits that are actually barriers to them moving forward. It's about breaking those habits. In fact, the way to break a habit is to replace it with a better habit. So you do conscious habit building. And
okay, so give us an example of habits that perhaps are hindering leaders from being more successful.
Well, listening, right? What happens with lots of leaders, because they think they know it, if one of their staff is coming to give it to them, they are not listening. They just think they already know the answer, and then they miss important parts. Then another habits, which is getting worse and worse, is the mobile phone, right? It's always present. Somebody's talking to you. You're half listening, but you're really flicking through. So multitasking is a myth that needs to be broken, because you're not paying full attention to any of those tasks that you're doing. Then I also talk about mindfulness in those habits. I talk about you got to look after yourself. So nutrition, movement, because if you're not healthy, you're not really able to have all of the energy, the attention to details, the focus to actually drive, be the leader that you can be. And again, that also mixes with emotional intelligence, is that I don't know whether you guys have a word like that in Malaysia, but here in Australia, we have a word called hangry, right? Where hungry and angry got mixed together.
Angry, yeah.
I talk about nutrition.
I get angry.
If you haven't eaten, you're more likely to be angry. So look after yourself. Eat, drink water. Don't get stuck at your desk for long hours. Get up every 50 minutes, things like that. Simple habits that if you build in, it would all create a bigger whole. So that's, I guess, probably from my perspective in terms of information, it's who you are, where you want to be, who you want to be, and how do you get there. And these are some of the tools that I use to help people on their leadership journey.
So, Dr. Mustapha, then, thank you very much for sharing. What we're going to do is now, for you as the audience out there, we're going to give you the opportunity to come online and ask questions. Now, how you can do that is really to message us on social media, whether you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook, And if you have asked an interesting enough question, we will bring you into the show and you can ask Dr. Mustapha directly. Now, we have via WhatsApp just got from someone we know a question, and her name is Nancy, and I'm going to bring her into the show right now. Nancy,
Hi,
how are you?
Rambo. Oh, hi, Brian. Yes, I'm good.
Hey,
Thank
Nancy.
you.
Now, Nancy, could
Hi,
you just
Rambo.
introduce yourself a little bit, and then please ask Rambo the question.
Yeah, thanks. Rambo, I'm Nancy. I'm a coach from Corporate Coach Academy. One of the common issues that I have with my coaching client is around the area of developing their leadership skills in the area of assertiveness and also having courage. And one of the common issue is setting boundaries as well as saying no to their bosses when there is like overload of work. For example, I can't manage 3 projects by mid-year. And when they carry out the action plan, and sometimes there is a backlash, and because of that, they tend to fall back, in becoming not confident again. So then I'm just wondering, based on the 5 areas of development that you mentioned, how can we then encourage our clients to show up in their courage and assertiveness on a day-to-day?
Yes, in fact, that's one of the hardest word to say in the English language is no. Right, and a lot of us struggle with that for multiple reasons. Right, we won't go into the reasons, but what I do around helping people overcome this barrier is to tell them that anything, if you say no today, it gives you the room to say yes in the future. It's about if you say yes today, you're going to have to say no to other, maybe more attractive stuff. So one phrasing that I use is around, will your future self be happy or unhappy with those yeses or nos that you're saying today? And a lot of time, it's the no. If you say no today, your future self would be happy because you've given them room to make better choices down the track. So that's one way I help people see the wisdom. And in terms of not being able to say no to their bosses, etc., it is around, again, I'm not too sure about the culture in Malaysia. In here in Australia, we try and build that. So I don't know whether you've heard of cultural dimensions by Hofstede. So this is where we study the different dimensions of culture. And one of those culture dimension is called power distance. So in Australia, I know we've got a very small power distance. So it is easier for someone to have a very open conversation with their manager saying, hey, and in fact, I help people with phrasing it, saying, hey, you've given me 4 or 5 things to do. I need your help in terms of looking at the priority. If I am to do a very good job with it, I'm not able to do all of them. Can you help me decide which one you want me to do first? I can deliver that by Friday, and then which one to do next, etc. Because the reality is sometimes their manager cannot remember all of the tasks. Throughout the day, they'll just say, can you do that? Can you do this? And they're not keeping record, and you feel overwhelmed by being able to have that. So what you can coach them is their ability to have that conversations. And the way we help people have those conversations is we help them with some of the wording where it's not coming across as a smart ass or being rude to the manager, but really seeking guidance and help so that you can do the best job that you can. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. Thanks, Rambo.
Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate your question.
Thank you for coming on, Nancy. And Nancy's from Malaysia.
That's right.
Cool.
Thank you. I will go to the next person, and that is a question that's coming out of Indonesia, and her name is Nurali. Nurali, hi, welcome to the show. You're muted, Nurali.
Hi, thank you, Brian. Hi, Dr. Mustafa. Thank you for
Hi,
having
Hi,
me.
Nurali.
could you
Nice
introduce
Yeah.
piano in
yourself,
the
your
background.
company, and your background, please? You're muted again.
Hey, what happened?
Yes.
Sorry. All
It's
right.
okay.
So,
Go ahead.
yeah, it's very interesting presentation that you just made. I'm really enjoying it. Uh, I'm just trying to be just more clearer about this, whether my understanding is okay or not. Especially about the who I am or who am I, and all of
Yes,
the iceberg and the past to the present and stuff like that. So, if I see it as reconnecting with ourselves, is that a correct understanding? That first. So, if that yes, so I think who we are is usually it's not usually, it's supposed to be cover a lot of aspect, which is physical, material, mental, and also spiritual. So
absolutely.
I see, yeah. So in terms of this spirituality, do you think it is important to also touch that in the coaching to make in order to reconnect and to understand who we are? And if you think it is important, so how do you see it, or based on your experiences, play out on the coaching session, so we can touch that area also, because it's part of ourselves that sometimes is very powerful. At the end of the day, it's very powerful force if we we connect to our spirituality, because it's so powerful. So
Yes.
that's my question. Thank you.
Yes, no, absolutely. And you're right with your first question. Self-discovery is really about reconnecting with yourself, because there are so many things that we forgot, right? And sometimes also when you look back about events that has happened into your life, maybe it didn't make sense at the time, but now when you see it, you can see how it's all connected to make you who you are today. So it's a very powerful exercise, and there are so many aspects. So what I do in my coaching is I would gauge what is important from the coachee themselves, rather than me saying, hey, spirituality is very, very important. And again, this is where I guess you coming from Indonesia, which is, I guess, strong religious place, where you might be able to just uh, ask the question, how important is spirituality in your life? And then by that way you gain permission that you can explore that. So in my world, what I would do initially, I would talk about uh, physical health, mental health, uh, emotional health, and then spiritual health as the four key health areas. And then I would get them to say which ones are important, which ones have had impact on your life. And again, what I do from a volunteering perspective here in Perth, I do a lot of volunteer work within children who have had cancer. So then I know how important physical health life events have had on them and their parents, which then also affects their mental health and their emotional health. But really, so the key message for you is seek their permission, ask them what is important, which then gives you the permission to explore each of those into deeper and deeper.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr.
Thanks,
Mustafa.
Norelli.
Nurali, thank you very much for asking the question.
Thank you.
Now we've got another one, and that's a, a question that's coming out from a guest from last week's show, Taranjit Singh, Quantum Step Advisory. Now he's got a couple of questions that he has messaged to us, and I'm going to read them out first before he comes on air. First question is around internal coaching versus mentoring. Will this not lead to conflict? And that's question number one. Question number two, how do you see the impact of AI on the coaching arena, and specifically from a relationship management perspective. Now, to actually ask the question, let's bring on Taranjit Singh from Quantum Step Advisory out of Malaysia. Taranjit, great to have you back on the show again.
It's my pleasure. It's absolutely my pleasure. And Dr. Mustapha, it's such a delight hearing you and the pearls of wisdom that you're sharing with us. So thank you for that. And Brian, thank you for having me and allowing me this opportunity. So,
Thanks,
Dr.
Ranjit.
Mustapha, yeah,
Some
the
very,
first
very
question
big
is,
questions there.
yeah, it's around, you're talking about coaching, internal coaches. There is a tendency, in my experience, when you come in as an internal coach, it's very easy to switch into the mentoring um, perspective. Now, what are your views and what are your thoughts around how can we prevent such conflict from taking shape, because they are very two different and distinct disciplines in this regard?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So my mantra that I keep, I guess, running in my head is more ask, less tell. Right?
More
That's
ask,
how
less
I
tell. That's a good thing to keep in mind.
very simple but very powerful. And then there is this concept of bracketing, right? So bracketing is around how when you're going into those sessions, you ground yourself. You're there as a coach to not to bring in your own preconceptions, preconceived ideas, judgment, etc. So I do a little 2-minute mindfulness activity that I ground myself and I remind myself more ask, less tell. And that's how I sort of navigate that sort of blurry line, because at the end of the day, it's all about the coach. And I'm helping them remember who they are, helping them bring things to the surface, helping them articulate who they want to be, what they want to achieve, and then helping them find options of how to get from here to there. So it is really, I guess that's where I see the coaching is really the helper, asking the questions.
Good.
And you can also, to a certain degree, again, based on each coachee, some of them are very driven, where you then don't have to be, but some of them need what you would call an accountability buddy.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And that's where you can also do a bit of that in the coaching world.
I like it. I like it. Thank you very much. And that's very helpful. The second question is around the impact of AI. Now, we are seeing all the way from the recent Davos discussions. ICAF has raised some very nice articles. They've written some very nice and published articles in this regard. And the idea now is the impact of artificial intelligence on our coaching arena. It's something that I see and I have seen playing out. Last week, I had the distinct opportunity to talk about democratization of coaching with Brian and some of our other guests, and I really enjoyed that. But this particular area of AI is becoming more and more apparent. And unfortunately, for the less initiated, you won't know the difference between what a true coach should be doing and what AI does. Because you know what, I'm a 25-year-old or I'm a 28-year-old. I've just entered into the workforce. I've not had the opportunity to experience what a coach looks like, or maybe I can't afford, for want of a better word, a one-on-one coaching. So what are your views here? Especially you mentioned about the relationship.
Absolutely.
How do you now see this playing out, Dr. Mustapha, from an AI angle into the coaching side? Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I guess we all need to think about it. In fact, even at ATI Mirage, I've started since last year, probably since April, we started a monthly almost think tank in the business around, well, what would be the impact of AI on us as a business? And we looked at it in multiple angles. One is, well, are there courses that we can run to help people see the benefit? Because there's always an element of they're going to take over the world and they take over the jobs and all of that, then how can I use AI to make our workshops even more interactive, gamification, all of that? Because the more you engage, because it is adult training, so you want to personalize, gamify, make it interesting, relevant, etc. So we looked at that. And then we also asked the existential question: will we still be here as a training organization with the advent of AI, or how do we pivot if we can see that we're going to go down the extinction, right? So then that same question can be applied to coaching, because someone can have a bit of a relationship with a robot, with a chatbot or whatever. In fact, even in the early days of chat GPT, early last year, I was every night after work, I would come and have a conversation with chat GPT. I would even ask questions like, hey, if I forgot to say thank you, would you get offended? If I tell you your answer is wrong, would you get offended? And that sort of, it was almost a friendship was building. I had to say, no, let's stop this. So people can get that relationship. And maybe the AI of today is not yet ready, because at the moment, all those, I guess the type of AI we're talking is the large language processing models.
Yes.
All they can do is give you answers at the moment. You're the one who's asking questions, they give you answers. And if you remember my mantra as a coach, more ask, less tell.
Yes.
Right? So maybe in the future, there might be an AI who would be asking the questions. Because a lot of time, again, Taranjit, you've been around a long time in the coaching arena. I'm sure you would have seen many of your coaches who actually know the answer to the situation they've come to.
Of course.
Right? And all we can do is really help them see the clarity and find ways to actually put that into practice, because there are certain barriers that are stopping them. So will AI actually be able to actually help us bring out those solutions that we already know deep down? Probably the answer at the moment is no, but we just got to keep our mind open to the fact that maybe it is possible, but maybe not.
Can I weigh in on the discussion here? And really, I think, and this is obviously a personal opinion, this is probably from an early adopter perspective, present company excluded, it would probably be very much Gen Y and or Gen Z, probably Gen Z and under and younger, because they are used to having very limited interaction or less interaction than our generation with people. So talking and being friends with an AI because you're on your phone all the time, which is already your consumer behavior today, is not a big leap of faith. So that's why, Dr. Mustapha, when you said you started developing a relationship, I didn't laugh. In fact, I said, wow, young people would probably do that. Because when you are an introvert in particular, and let's talk about personality profiling. If you're an introvert and your job is perhaps in technology, that's not very far-fetched at all, because your interaction is really with your screen. You are comfortable working from home, working in a technology business. You have very little interaction with you may be working remotely. You may not have to even attend office because you're coding. And therefore, coaching and developing a relationship with a digital coach is not far-fetched at all. That's an opinion that I hold, but I think that, sorry, Taranjit, go ahead.
So, Brian, that's absolutely spot on. Why go far? It's already playing out in Japan with the dolls, and I'm sure you've read all about this, right? So, I mean, it's not even, and I'm being very pragmatic here. It's not a digital piece of work. It is hardware, and you've got this hardware running around, and rightly or wrongly, we're not here to judge, but it's already happening.
Yeah.
So the
And
whole notion around relationship building is actually taking it one step further. You've got all these neural nets playing out. So my question here is, what are the implications then on coaches? Do we, and I'm being devil's advocate, do we actually have a role to play in about 5 to 7 years from now? That's all I'm trying to put across.
yeah. And also the other point you made a bit earlier is that those people who are getting that coaching from the AI, they don't know any different. They
No, they
think
don't.
it's the best thing, and
Exactly.
even if it's helping them 5% of the time, that's okay,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? But I guess we would still be needed probably when they become a bit more mature,
Yes.
right? Because that age of technology, it's although it might be Gen Z, etc., but when they become more mature, they will feel that, hey, it's not giving me everything that I need. I need to actually find real live coaches. Again,
And
maybe
I think
just hanging on to hope. I don't know.
so. I
Thank you.
think that okay. So and if you look back and I had said this. So I run a business in talent acquisition for the last 23 years. So it's a recruitment business, and we do senior and middle management. And 15 years ago, I already said, oh, the bottom will fall out of the entry level and middle level recruitment because you have talent acquisition tools that will automate the processes and companies can do it themselves. Because why would they pay? Oh, because it's cheaper to do that and paying 20 to 25% of annual. My thinking at that time was that basically technology will remove that layer of the business. And then what would be left is really the upper part of middle management and senior management, where basically companies will pay for talent acquisition in that way. Now, fast forward 15 years, yes, there is a lot of of usage of technologies among large companies to automate using recruitment management tools in order to streamline the process. But guess what? The recruitment business is still thriving even at that level. So I think that maybe that gives us clues in terms of the coaching business itself. I think that perhaps at senior levels, people will still want to deal with a human being. Although the cost of delivery is obviously quite high, but then at the more junior levels where you can't afford that level of cost of delivery, you need cheaper ways to deliver coaching. And that's perhaps where AI and digital coaching will basically fill the gap.
So I agree with that, Brian. And I think if you look at the ATSs that we are seeing now for mass recruitment, you look at all the profiling tools that are out there for mass recruitment. I remember a couple of years back, we were doing, a restructuring of a large local conglomerate. And it took us months because we did not have the technology to hit the vast number of thousands of people when we were doing the profiling. Today, you're doing it in a couple of hours to hit a couple of hundred people. So, that whole process has shifted. Now, the issue now comes in is, are we still using a similar approach for all levels, or are we now differentiating? And my point here that I'm trying to put across, and I would love to hear Dr. Mustapha's view on where does he see Australia moving down this path within this coaching arena, given the artificial intelligence, given this whole generative AI area that we are looking at. Dr. Mustapha, your thoughts, sir?
Yeah. Well, I guess part of our client base, which is the government, right? In government here in Perth, until there's a policy that has been written by the agency to say it is okay to use ChatGPT, they cannot use it. Right? So although in a lot of my courses, like I do a bit of business writing courses, and I say, hey, you can use ChatGPT to give you a very good first draft, they cannot do that. Right? So there is that, and I guess it takes time for government to look at the pros and the cons before they release it. So there is that, I guess, a bit of lag. Whereas in the private world, look, I do a lot of work with the big mining giants here. They're full on with automation. They've got big haul trucks that are being remotely driven by young Gen X who knows how to use the joystick. So those skills of playing games are now paying dividends because they've got good hand-eye coordination. They can be sitting here in Perth and driving big haul trucks, which are 2,000 Ks up north, right? So they are very quick on the uptake of technology. So again, I can see how AI could be very useful in that area whereby you can have AI who's got multiple sensors. You know how there's AI that is used in self-driving vehicles.
Yes,
right?
Autonomous.
So now you could actually go to fully automated.
Yes.
Right? They're even doing research on driverless trains. So these are big trains that are taking the ore from inland all the way to the port. And the train, one train itself could be 1 kilometer long, full of carts of ore. And you can have AI. Again, on a rail track, it's really about much simpler than on roads. So there is, I guess, not just large language models, but other types of AI that will start to be used. And just to come back from, I guess, AI and coaching, potentially the, I guess in the mining world, because there's such a flux of people, I haven't seen much demand for coaching services in that industry. But again, that could be just what I'm exposed to. It might be they do have some needs that I'm not aware of, and they're getting that fulfilled somewhere else.
Taranjit, we're running out of time. Is there anything else you want to add before I take you off air? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mustapha. Thank you, Brian, for giving us
Thanks,
the opportunity.
Taranjit. Nice meeting you.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Mustapha, it's been a great conversation, I think. But before we leave, any final thoughts in terms of perhaps wrapping up the conversation that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, well, I guess when I think about some of those self-efficacy habits that I find a lot of people, not just leaders, that they need to have a think about, one of those is self-reflection. So members of the audience, if you can have a think about how can you bring in a habit, if you can do daily reflection, that would be
daily reflection. Okay.
Yes. So at the end of your day, have a look at, it's just becoming aware of what have you achieved today. Has it moved you forward? Because then that will start to trigger you, like, are you just living, like, again, no judgment from me. If this is how you want to lead your life, whereby, okay, you've got a job, you're paying the mortgage, you're having food on the table, you're having money for entertainment, travel, you're happy, that's okay. But for those who actually want to achieve something, whatever that is, then you need to think about a bit more clearly what it is you want to achieve, and then daily self-reflection to see whether you're moving towards it, whether what you've put in place is actually working or not. That would keep you self-aware so that you can make corrective changes in your trajectory to get you to where you want to go.
On that note, Dr. Mustapha, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Thanks, Brian. It's been a pleasure.
Now, we've been speaking to Dr. Mustapha Ramdianee, affectionately known by all his friends as Rambo, as the Chief Operating Officer at ATI Mirage Training and Business Solutions, coming to us out of Perth, Australia. I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to Biztech's Aha, the coaching show. Now, this show will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.